Rain fell like it was angry at the world. Not a gentle drizzle, but heavy, relentless drops that soaked black suits, wilted white lilies, and turned the cemetery into a cold, gray blur. Thunder rolled in the distance as Adriana stood frozen beside her father's casket. This was supposed to be a goodbye, a moment of dignity, a final act of respect for a man who had worked his entire life with his hands and his heart. Instead, it became a public execution. Brandon arrived late. Of course he did. The sound of expensive leather shoes crunching against wet gravel cut through the silence. Adriana didn't need to turn around to know it was him. She could feel his presence the way you feel a storm before it hits. And he wasn't alone. Vanessa clung to his arm, dressed in designer black, lips painted a cruel shade of red. She looked around the funeral like it was an inconvenience, like the rain, the grief, and the dead man in the box were beneath her. Brandon glanced at the casket and smirked. "So this is it?" he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "The big farewell for a janitor." A few people gasped. Adriana's breath caught in her throat. Her father's name hadn't even been spoken yet. Before anyone could react, Brandon reached down, picked up a bottle of deep red wine, clearly not meant for this place, and tilted it without hesitation. The wine spilled over the white funeral flowers, staining them crimson, like blood. "Whoops," Brandon said mockingly. "Guess it's fitting. Cheap flowers for a cheap life." Vanessa laughed, not nervously, not awkwardly. She laughed with pleasure. Adriana finally turned to face him, her hands trembling, her eyes burning. "Get out," she whispered. Brandon ignored her. Instead, he pulled a thin manila envelope from his coat pocket and shoved it into her chest. "Divorce papers," he said casually. "I'm done pretending." The words echoed louder than the thunder. "You're broke. Your father was broke, and I'm not wasting another second tied to a failure." People stared. Some looked away in shame. Others watched, stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing. Vanessa leaned in and whispered, just loud enough to be heard. "You should thank us. At least now you can finally live the life you deserve." Adriana felt something inside her collapse. Not just her marriage, not just her future, but the last fragile piece holding her upright. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She bent down, gently touched the edge of her father's casket, and whispered goodbye. Then she walked away. No umbrella, no car waiting, just a cheap yellow taxi idling at the gate. As she slid into the back seat, rain streaked down the window, blurring the cemetery behind her. The driver asked softly, "Where to?" Adriana didn't answer at first, because for the first time in her life, she had nowhere left to go, and Brandon had no idea that the man he just humiliated was the same man who built the empire that would soon destroy him. Clara notices Mrs. Whitman, the elderly guest, struggling quietly, while everyone else in the opulent room remains oblivious to her discomfort. Unlike the polished staff and the arrogant manager, Clara senses that the woman's distress is not just about a minor inconvenience. It is deeper, rooted in memory loss and isolation. Driven by empathy and a natural sense of responsibility, she steps forward despite having just been reprimanded earlier, showing courage that goes unnoticed by the other staff but immediately catches the eye of Alexander, the wealthy and powerful figure at the center of the room. Alexander is initially intrigued by Clara's boldness, her willingness to break the rigid protocol to help someone in need, which creates a subtle tension between him and the social norms of his elite world. Meanwhile, Bianca, Alexander's ex-fiancée, and a figure accustomed to attention and control, notices Clara's growing confidence. Sensing a threat to her own influence, Bianca begins to plot subtle ways to undermine Clara through whispered comments, challenges, and public microaggressions, planting the seeds of rivalry and tension that the audience can sense even before they fully unfold. The dynamic between Clara and Bianca sets up the first layer of conflict, highlighting the stakes beyond just Clara's personal survival. She must navigate a world of wealth, power, and social hierarchy while remaining true to herself. Clara's first minor victory occurs when she successfully interprets Mrs. Whitman's needs, calming her distress in a way no one else could. This action not only resolves the immediate crisis, but also establishes Clara's intelligence, resourcefulness, and empathy, qualities that make the audience immediately root for her. Alexander, witnessing her skill and intuition, becomes both a potential ally and a source of fascination for Clara, his curiosity and approval, adding complexity to their evolving relationship. By the end of this section, the audience understands the initial stakes. Clara has proven herself capable, but the challenges, both from Bianca's scheming and the elite environment she must navigate, are only beginning. This sets up the story's momentum, laying the groundwork for the rising tension and deeper conflicts that will drive the narrative forward. As the immediate crisis with Mrs. Whitman subsides, Clara finds herself unexpectedly pulled closer into Alexander's orbit. What began as a single act of compassion slowly turns into repeated encounters. Small tasks assigned directly by Alexander, quiet requests to stay nearby, and subtle gestures that signal his growing trust. For Clara, this new attention is both unsettling and intoxicating. She is keenly aware that she does not belong in this world of tailored suits, whispered deals, and effortless power. Yet she cannot deny the pull she feels toward Alexander's composed intensity and unspoken vulnerability. Internally, she battles self-doubt, questioning whether his interest is genuine or merely curiosity sparked by novelty. Alexander, on the other hand, begins to see Clara as a disruption to his carefully controlled life. Accustomed to people who flatter him or fear him, he finds her honesty disarming. Her refusal to be impressed by wealth, her instinctive empathy, and her quiet dignity unsettle him more than any boardroom challenge ever has. However, he remains guarded. His world has taught him that trust is expensive and mistakes are costly. As a result, his interactions with Clara oscillate between warmth and emotional distance, creating a slow-burning tension that neither of them openly acknowledges. Meanwhile, Bianca intensifies her quiet campaign against Clara. Unlike overt cruelty, Bianca's tactics are subtle and calculated, publicly polite smiles paired with private sabotage. She spreads doubt among the staff, frames Clara as unprofessional, and subtly manipulates social situations to isolate her. Bianca's motivation is not only jealousy but fear. Fear of losing relevance, control, and the power she once wielded effortlessly beside Alexander. To the audience, Bianca's actions serve as a constant undercurrent of threat, reminding them that Clara's position remains fragile and temporary. The external pressure escalates as Clara is invited, unexpectedly, into spaces she was never meant to occupy. Private dinners, exclusive meetings, and intimate moments with Mrs. Whitman expose her further to scrutiny and resentment. Each step forward heightens the risk of public embarrassment or sudden dismissal. These scenes deepen the stakes, showing that Clara's greatest challenge is not her lack of wealth, but her refusal to abandon her principles in exchange for security. At the same time, emotional bonds begin to form. Mrs. Whitman grows deeply attached to Clara, seeing in her a reminder of kindness, long absent from her life. Through these interactions, the story subtly reveals Clara's past, her resilience, her struggles, and the values that shaped her strength. These moments allow the audience to connect more deeply with her character, reinforcing why her success feels deserved rather than accidental. As tensions rise, Alexander is forced to confront conflicting loyalties. His past with Bianca, the expectations of his social circle, and his growing respect for Clara. His internal struggle mirrors Clara's own, creating parallel emotional arcs that draw them closer, even as circumstances threaten to pull them apart. By the end of this section, the narrative reaches a point where the audience senses that something must give. Either Clara will be pushed out of this world entirely, or she will be forced to fight for her place within it. The midpoint of the story marks a decisive shift. What once felt like cautious curiosity and subtle tension transforms into a moment that forces every character to reveal their true intentions. Clara is invited to attend a private, corporate gala as Alexander's guest, a decision that immediately places her at the center of scrutiny. For the first time, she is no longer merely observing the elite world from its edges. She is visibly inside it. This public association becomes the spark that ignites the underlying conflict, particularly for Bianca, who recognizes that Clara is no longer a temporary inconvenience, but a genuine threat. During the event, Clara inadvertently uncovers a crucial piece of information, a manipulation within Alexander's company that Bianca has been quietly orchestrating, whether through an overheard conversation, a misplaced document, or a revealing exchange. Clara realizes that Bianca's intentions go far beyond personal jealousy. Her actions pose a real risk to Alexander's reputation, his business, and the stability of those who depend on him. This discovery places Clara in a moral crisis. She is no longer deciding whether she belongs in Alexander's world. She must decide whether she is willing to challenge it. As Clara wrestles with this knowledge, Bianca accelerates her plan. In a calculated move, Bianca publicly humiliates Clara, subtly but effectively, casting doubt on her credibility and motives in front of influential guests. The moment is designed to break her, to remind her of her place. For a brief moment, it works. Clara feels the weight of the room closing in, her past insecurities resurfacing, and the familiar fear of being disposable. The twist occurs when Clara refuses to retreat. Instead of reacting emotionally, she makes a controlled, deliberate choice to speak the truth, carefully, strategically, and with dignity. Her intervention exposes inconsistencies in Bianca's narrative without revealing everything at once, forcing Alexander to confront the possibility that he has been deceived. This is the moment where Clara transforms from a passive participant into an active agent within the story. Alexander's reaction becomes the emotional core of the midpoint. Torn between his history with Bianca and the evidence before him, he chooses to pause the proceedings rather than dismiss Clara. This act alone shifts the balance of power. For the first time, Bianca loses her unquestioned authority, and Clara gains something far more valuable than status: credibility. The audience witnesses Alexander's internal conflict as he begins to see Clara not just as someone he admires, but as someone he must take seriously. The aftermath of the confrontation is quieter but heavier. In a private moment, Alexander questions Clara, not with suspicion but with measured respect. She explains her actions without pleading or defensiveness, making it clear that she expects nothing in return. This honesty deepens Alexander's emotional investment, while also heightening Clara's vulnerability. She has crossed a line she cannot uncross. Whether Alexander stands with her or not, her life will not return to what it was. The climax unfolds during a final, high-profile, corporate gala, meant to celebrate Alexander's company and restore confidence after weeks of internal tension. The atmosphere is polished and triumphant on the surface, but beneath the elegance lies unresolved conflict. Clara attends the event with measured composure, fully aware that this night will determine not only her future, but also the truth behind Bianca's manipulation. She enters the room, knowing she has no protection beyond her integrity, and that alone raises the stakes higher than ever before. Bianca, sensing her influence slipping away, makes her boldest move yet. In front of investors, executives, and members of the press, she presents carefully curated evidence designed to portray Clara as a calculated opportunist who used sympathy and proximity to gain favor. The accusation is devastatingly public. Gasps ripple through the room as Bianca's words weaponize class difference, painting Clara as an outsider who overstepped her place. For a brief, crushing moment, the room turns against Clara, and silence threatens to erase everything she has built. Instead of defending herself immediately, Clara does something unexpected. She remains calm. When she finally speaks, her voice is steady, stripped of emotion, but heavy with truth. She dismantles Bianca's narrative piece by piece, not by attacking her character, but by revealing inconsistencies, contradictions, and motivations that expose the deeper scheme. Her words carry weight because they are grounded in evidence and moral clarity, not desperation. This moment marks her complete transformation. She is no longer reacting to power, she is challenging it. Alexander's role becomes decisive. Watching the confrontation unfold, he realizes the extent of Bianca's deception and his own complicity in allowing it to persist. In a powerful public gesture, he intervenes, not to rescue Clara, but to acknowledge her courage and validate her truth. He halts the proceedings, discredits Bianca's claims, and formally removes her from her position, exposing her betrayal in front of the very audience she sought to impress. The power dynamic shatters, and Bianca's carefully constructed image collapses in real time. The emotional peak arrives not in triumph, but in vulnerability. After the crowd disperses, Clara prepares to leave quietly, believing she has done all she can. It is here, in a private, unguarded moment, that Alexander confronts his own emotions. He admits that Clara changed him, not by fitting into his world, but by refusing to compromise herself to survive in it. This confession is not framed as a grand romantic gesture, but as an acknowledgement of respect, growth, and accountability. However, Clara does not accept his words easily. She challenges Alexander in return, questioning whether his feelings can exist outside power imbalance and privilege. This moment of honesty reinforces her agency and prevents the resolution from feeling unearned. Alexander responds not with promises, but with action, offering transparency, equality, and choice. The tension resolves not through rescue, but through mutual recognition. In the aftermath of the public confrontation, the world that once felt intimidatingly vast begins to quiet. The scandal fades from headlines, Bianca's name disappears from elite circles, and Alexander's company slowly stabilizes under renewed trust. Clara, however, does not rush to claim victory. Instead, she retreats into reflection, grappling with the emotional weight of everything that has unfolded. The attention, the scrutiny, and the sudden shift in her circumstances feel overwhelming, forcing her to confront a question she has avoided all along. What kind of life does she truly want now that she has proven she belongs anywhere? Alexander approaches this phase differently than before. Gone is the commanding presence that once defined him. In its place stands a man willing to listen, to wait, and to accept uncertainty. He offers Clara space rather than persuasion, making it clear that her choices, whatever they may be, will be respected. This restraint deepens their connection far more than any grand declaration ever could. Their interactions become quieter, more honest, stripped of power dynamics and expectation. Mrs. Whitman's presence anchors the emotional resolution. In moments of calm, she expresses gratitude, not just for Clara's care, but for restoring dignity and warmth to a life long overshadowed by loneliness. Through her, the story reinforces its central theme: that compassion, not ambition, creates lasting impact. Clara recognizes that her strength has never come from proximity to wealth, but from the values she carried with her long before she entered this world. The epilogue unfolds with deliberate simplicity. Clara makes a decision that surprises everyone, including Alexander. Rather than accepting a permanent place in the elite hierarchy, she chooses independence on her own terms. Whether this means returning to her studies, pursuing a career shaped by purpose, or redefining success entirely, the choice is hers alone. Alexander does not stand in her way. Instead, he walks beside her, not as a protector or benefactor, but as an equal. The final moments emphasize transformation rather than reward. Clara is no longer invisible, yet she does not seek the spotlight. Alexander, once untouchable, learns the value of humility and accountability. Their connection remains open-ended, rooted in mutual respect, growth, and possibility rather than certainty. As the story closes, the audience is left with a powerful reminder. True victory is not rising above others, but rising into oneself without losing dignity. The screen fades not on excess or spectacle, but on quiet confidence. A fitting end to a story that began with invisibility and culminated in self-worth.